Thank you for being with me today. My name is Ron Levine. I'm from Mindfulness in Blue Jeans. And I was introduced to this practice 24 years ago during a time that I was dealing with clinical anxiety and depression and panic disorder, which had blown up into agoraphobia. I was on disability. I couldn't leave the apartment without melting down. And this practice, mindfulness, insight meditation, vipassana, this has been a cornerstone of my recovery from that time for almost a quarter of a century now. I love being able to give back to a practice that has changed, if not saved, my life. It has done so for so many others as well, and I'm humbled and honored and thrilled to be part of that circle. So here we are, and thank you for being with me. Feeling, in terms of what the Buddha taught, is not what we normally think of as feeling. We think of emotion. We think of happiness or sadness or perhaps anxiety, these sorts of things. These, of course, do exist as phenomenon, as processes in Buddhism. They're recognized, not that they don't exist, but the word feeling doesn't apply to those. Feeling in Buddhism has a much narrower focus. And it's really quite simple. Feeling refers to when we experience things, or perhaps label things, perceive things as either positive, negative, or neutral. Or it's sometimes referred to as pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And that's it. That's it. I often say that this practice is simple, but not easy. And usually what is not easy about it is keeping it that simple. So today's sitting may be a little challenging. And the challenge really lies in the simplicity. But it's in that simplicity that we are able to start seeing all of the unnecessary complexity we're always trying to add on top. That's usually the stuff that's getting us in the most trouble. And we begin to see how habitual that is. How sneaky it is. When we actually take a few minutes and say, I'm going to try not to do that. Or at the very least, because sometimes even trying not to do that can be a bit much. At the very least, just saying, I'm going to watch the process of it happening. It's very illuminating. Very illuminating. This is the kind of stuff that allows us to go back out into the world and interact with the world and other people and situations in such a way that they may all be as they were before, but we are no longer as we were before. And that makes for a very different experience. So let's sit for a bit with this. Okay? I always like to begin my sittings by imagining that I am suspended from the ceiling by a string attached to the top of my head. It's a nice cue for sitting up straight without adding any tension to do so. If we are experiencing some tension right now, that is fine. We don't have to do anything about it. We don't have to do anything with it. If it's here, it's allowed to be here. It is also allowed to leave in its own time. That may be today, it may not. I also like to notice what is supporting me. The cushion, chair, floor. So there's some sense of grounding. Even if we may not feel particularly grounded at the moment, there is something supporting us. It is capable of doing the job, and we can let it do so. So let's take a moment and notice what is supporting us at the bottom. And this easy lift at the top. And whatever else we may have happening in between the two. Right now. Simply as it is. And if you haven't already, you may begin to bring your attention to your breathing. And this is the part where I usually say that when we bring our attention to our breathing, we usually start to shape it or try to control it somehow. But why do we do that? Perhaps it's not comfortable the way it is. Perhaps we think we need to have a certain kind of breathing in our meditation practice. Something long and contemplative, right? But what do these all amount to? A feeling that the quality of the breath, for whatever reason, is negative. Not pleasant. Perhaps you did not begin to shape or control your breathing. In that case, perhaps you found it positive or pleasant. Perhaps neutral. Neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I mentioned simplicity. Let's take a few moments and see if we can keep it just this simple. Noticing the breathing and whether we perceive the sensation as pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And the way that we feel about it could shift from breath to breath. Whatever the experience is, let's notice it using feeling. Positive, negative, or neutral as our only reference. If you're finding it challenging to stick with this, even just for a minute, without all kinds of things coming up, other than the breathing and its quality of feeling, it doesn't mean you're doing this wrong. That's what we're here to see. That's all that added complexity. That we've been layering on top of our experience for so long that it's become habitual. It's automatic. We don't even realize we're doing it. Now, it took us a while to get to the point of being able to do that on autopilot. So it's going to take a while to deconstruct that process as well. So be sure you're giving yourself some compassion here. This isn't a competition, even with yourself, let alone anyone else. This is a practice of clear seeing. It's less important what you're seeing. What matters is that you're seeing it. And we can extend this using of feelings as a reference to what we think of as feelings, in an everyday sense, emotion. So if we have some feelings coming up around this particular practice we're doing right now, which again is simple, but not easy. If we're having some feelings coming up about it, about our experience with it, we can also look at that and say, okay, is this positive, negative, or neutral? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Not in an attempt to change. We're not trying to take something unpleasant and force it into the pleasant box. That's another layer of complexity. We're not there. If we see ourselves doing that, great. We caught it. We see it. And we come back. Let's take a couple of minutes. You may stick just with the breathing. You may observe emotions. You may observe physical sensation. Whatever's coming up for you, stay centered on the breathing and notice positive, negative, or neutral. If we spin off into a daydream, mental storyline, at some point we catch it. And we may have a feeling about the fact that we lost the breathing for a bit. Or perhaps we have a feeling about the fact that we remembered the breathing and are back again. We engage with it in the same manner either way. Is the feeling positive, negative, or neutral? And that's all we have to do. Right now, with this practice, that's it. Can we keep it just that simple? as we continue to do this over time, and we build the skill of observing this kind of feeling with things that arise. It starts to open up a little space for inquiry. We're no longer identifying so tightly with mind states. We begin to move from I am anxious, as an example, to perhaps I feel anxiety. And we may notice that that feels negative. And perhaps as our identification with the mind state and the physical sensations that accompany it further loosens, we may take the I out of it and simply say, there is anxiety. And as we start to notice with greater subtlety through our inquiry and our observation the various aspects of the experience of anxiety, we may start to say, oh, I'm experiencing sensations that I associate with this label, anxiety. And this one feels negative, and well, this one actually kind of feels positive. Like perhaps the burst of energy that comes with it. That's a hell of a difference from I am anxious and it's purely negative. Same sensations, very different experience. All the Buddha taught was how we go about alleviating our own suffering. And that's exactly an example of how we would go about it. And that can come from just what we're doing right now. This is something we can do on the cushion, off the cushion, anytime, anywhere. Something this simple, not easy, but simple, is enough to lead us to our freedom.